You're listening to QCast, presented by Qcella Media. Please consider giving generously to Qcella's nonprofit mission. To find out more about our mission and to make a donation, visit our website at qcast.qcella.org. Your tax-deductible donation will help us continue bringing you quality podcasts just like this one.
I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. You can't take away my soul. You tried to tell me I don't count, but I know in my heart that's not true. So you cannot take me down that path. I'll make it without you. I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. My life counts for something, and you wake up and I'll be gone. You'll know that you were wrong.
Welcome to my show, Shades of Gender. I'm your host, Terry Ryan. Each show will be talking about gender identity, including the transgender, cross-dressers, non-binary gender individuals, and those who self-identify with these groups. The definitions of these groups are often misunderstood and certainly misused. And our goal is to identify these groups, listen to their stories and their journeys in life to get a better understanding of who they are and what they're doing and how they're doing. And in spite of the media, who may characterize what others may select as their definitions of what these labels represent, our goal is to get to know the real people behind these definitions. So I personally am very excited today. We're on show 2 of season 2, and I'm thrilled to continue the season and have someone that I've actually talked to for a while via phone, and we've talked about a number of things, including gender identity. Her name is Carrie Lynn. And Carrie lives in the Denver, Colorado area. So welcome to the show, Carrie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, you're welcome. And I was intrigued from our first, I guess probably it was via email, and then we just spoke, and we've been back and forth, talking. So I do appreciate you, coming on. And since this is a radio podcast and we can't see you, can you identify, yourself, or how you identify currently yourself on the gender scale?
Sure. And it really depends on the day, quite honestly, and whether you're talking mentally or my physical presentation. And right now, I'm boy mode, really grubby.
You're grubby boy mode. This weekend you were, you had some events I know that you spoke at. So
well,
you were.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
And you're dressed as your femme self, right?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
And I had to cancel one of our nights out because I got sick, and I didn't think everybody would want to hear me cough all night at the events. But yeah,
So would you say you're gender fluid? I mean, is that a fair term for you?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm liking that term. I mean, I really am liking that term. I mean, it gives us another term besides cross-dressing or cross-dresser.
Yeah, well, for me, I found when my wife and I first started going to a counselor, and she was trying to help me figure out exactly where I am, and she bantied about the term gender fluid, and I thought it stuck. I liked it because so many of the people see cross-dresser as a negative term.
Yeah,
and
it's like they think of it as fetish or
exactly.
A guy wearing women's clothing. I mean, I don't know. Those stereotypes on cross-dressing, it's a shame because transvestite to me even has less of a negative feeling to the term. For some reason, the media or the maybe it's the number of sissy cross-dressing and the porn on site, or the close-ups of the of the crotch of under a skirt or something, has just really tainted anyone who is in that center of cross-dressing. So what do you think?
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and in fact, we have to give credit where credit is due. The younger generation, the Miley Cyrus is who is on Orange is the New Black. Rose. Anyway, I don't remember her name, but they were some of the first that I knew to talk about being gender fluid, and now the actor from Star Wars, Billy D. Williams, I saw the other day, he just came out as gender fluid.
Interesting. I didn't even realize that. So he came out. So he's an older actor, isn't he, Billy D? Right? Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the gender fluid is, so now we've got a broader term that doesn't just lock us into one role as a transgender. Was supposed to be the bigger term, but now it's again it would appear that that the term now for transgender is really born in the wrong body, and self-identifying as the opposite gender. So we were left the cross-dressing or gender non-binary gender individuals, or even with again the cross-dresser or people that presented in both with gender fluid. So I guess so. So let's say gender fluid, and your therapist gave you or introduced you to that particular definition based on what you discussed with her.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she did. And in fact, one of the other terms that I think you and I are similar genre of age, and this term was so horrible when we were young, but queer now has become the term that so many of the young people that I talk to use. And under the LGBTQ umbrella, I almost feel like maybe I fit better in the Q arena than under the T umbrella.
Okay, so now there's an interesting discussion, because what is the definition of queer?
I don't think it has a clear definition other than non-binary, gender non-conforming. I don't think it really has a clear definition.
I see why it fits in so well then, because it's a bookend to being able to be in that space where you don't have to lock into one gender or sexual identity, right?
Right. Uh-huh. And I mean, so many of the kids hate labels, and I understand that. I don't really like being labeled, because if somebody else borrows that label and they're a little different, it is awkward. But by the same token, when you meet someone within the community, it's very nice to know exactly what to say to them if they ask, well, who are you?
Right. Well, especially, if you're public, right? I think the biggest problem, and you can certainly, we'll talk about this. I think it's a good topic, because I know you're not totally out, is, no. You are to your wife, and I'm sure we'll talk about who you're out to, but certainly not at your work, which is a mainstream, you're a talented, you have a successful career, and you are, well, I know you're, I don't know how far you want to go on that, but you certainly have a very full life in addition to just being queer. And so I guess the question I do have is that, when you're identifying, do you think that the challenge still, especially in someone that is, older and probably younger too, is to be able to be out doing what you're doing in business and still kind of float between genders, Do you think that is confusing for people? I mean, I think that's, it's like, who am I talking to today? Though we know it's really, you're trying to unite both parts of that, which is you. And you're not alone on this. I mean, what I found out when I started working with, the topic, I mean, I had 60 or 70,000 on my Shades of Gender blog when I first started doing it in 2013. And I had stories upon stories. And I'm like, wait a minute here. I couldn't build an audience. If I talked about, self-help or maybe dogs, animals. But, I built an audience so fast. I mean, I had a book, I was shopping and I could prove those numbers. I mean, it was huge. And so the bottom line, I said to my husband, I said, well, honey, and we called the term cross-dressers, and I don't mean, I'm going to probably start dropping it soon, but it's been a term that's been out there, that for so long, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is really an international person here. This is not just, So I guess, I've always been, looking because a queer, I asked some people and they're that are gay, and they say, well, we're going back to the term that we used to have as a gay person, that we used to be called queer. And that's why I was curious what, but they already have a acronym. So I guess I can't have 2 out of the 5, right? We need to give it up for the, gender, the gender fluid, maybe. I like it.
Well, and that you just said something that's kind of an issue in the LGBTQ community, because the gay community, which I just read the other day, you're in the gayest community in the country.
Yeah, well,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. No, you're right. No, Palm Springs is, total gay. Yeah. We're very colorful in this town.
Well, one of the problems that we have is in the gender non-conforming side is that many of in the gay community, the male gay community just do not want to accept people like me. And it's funny that the lesbian community is not nearly as, what I want to say, judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little more. So you're finding that the lesbian community is a little more open-minded toward the non-conforming than the gay community?
Overall, yes. Mm-hmm. It's funny, though, because as I meet more and more gay individuals, or I come out to them, let's say, because a lot of them I have known, they don't show me any animosity, but to see what they write online and how they react to others is disheartening sometimes.
It is. I have to tell you, I was out to dinner with a couple months ago with 2 gay couples and then my husband, and I was talking about the show, and they were actually laughing at it. Laughing about trans and the non-conforming and I had to step up. First of all, I thought, gee, do I need to replace my friends because they shouldn't laugh at anything I do? But they were nervous about it. I don't know. We finally had some real dialogue, and I said, you're not, this is, let me tell you the background on this. I mean, you're talking millions and millions of people that fit within this, whatever you want to label it. There's trans on one end of the spectrum, why I called the show Shades of Gender. And then there's the non-conforming, and there's in between. But this is, but I found the gay men that I know were probably more prejudiced than the straight people.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. They're really more threatened for some reason. And I said, and really non-inclusive. So I've had a battle. I mean, ever since I married a cross-dresser documentary in 2013 for Sky TV in London, in the UK, I would have my gay friends pull me aside and say, we don't understand it. We don't know what it is. So I again, this is, I don't know what's happening. I just had a guest in the schools at a younger level. You're talking about the younger, the high school kids that are coming out into the world. And, I think, again, this gender fluid is coming out as being gender fluid, which is probably better to say. I think in many ways, gender fluid is a term, catch-all term. I was talking to another guest about, as they're developing their own identity, that they're kind of feeling maybe they can kind of bank themselves here for a while till they figure out who they are.
Well, yeah. And, the thing is, gender is such a social construct. It could be fluid if it wasn't for I don't want to go too far, but the religious right,
Right. Yeah. Well, right.
I'll leave it there.
You're right. Well, it's male or female. I mean, rightly so. When you live in a society where it's been a female and male, certainly in our lifetime, and when people want to know what they're dealing with, and it's the stereotypical role models just don't vanish, right? I mean, it's easier to kind of put people in boxes because kind of hit the high notes on people without having to delve too far into, we're kind of based on labels and definitions.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think we are. What I try to do is get me, like I said in my opening on my show, is to get through the labels. I mean, we need some labels. The labels help, kind of put people even on this show where they are in the gender. But I do think that what is, and this is, my opinion on when my ex-husband cross-dressed and he didn't talk about cross-dressing, but it was, he obviously liked doing it and asked to do it without the conversation of what he was doing. I have to say, and again, maybe it's because I'm a baby boomer, that it was very, but at the time I was in my 20s, it was like very mentally disturbing for me to now suddenly see my husband in a full mode of femme and not really knowing what to do because I'd always been the female, right?
Yeah, I think that's where my first wife was. I think it's scary. Freaked out.
It's kind of scary. I have to be honest, right? I mean, it's kind of scary because, again, no one's talking and then you're supposed to just kind of adapt to it. And then it's like, well, where's my husband? And this is not what I signed on for. And it's not even being, I don't know, it's not even being judgmental. It's just I think it's just out of fear. I mean, it's just then the communication breaks down. Is that what you found with your first wife?
I think, yeah, to some degree. And I think it was, I think every person who's like me goes through to some degree puberty in that first, or maybe every time they dress until they're able to come out and be a little more free. And so you want to look like a young girl, hooker, slut, whatever, all at once, because that's what you maybe have. I don't know why, but I know that I really I thought I wanted to look like that. And then when I got the opportunity to become more public 5 years ago, it was like all of a sudden, this is kind of cool. I can just go out in public and kind of just blend in. And now my style is, I don't know, just a casual chic, I guess. I don't dress for thrills anymore. Let's just leave it like that.
So you bring up a good point. I've heard this said over in the community a lot for the cross-dressing community. They have said that, when they come out and they're able to finally come out, they come out whether they're 60, 70, 40, or 30, they come out as an adolescent, right? So they're short skirts, stiletto heels, it doesn't matter, very provocative, because that's their vision of who they should be, because maybe that's what they're attracted to, maybe it's a fantasy. So it becomes more of a fantasy, maybe they want attention, and then as they're out more, they start becoming more, getting into their own style of who they really are as an individual versus just kind of the stereotype, right?
That's kind of how I've never really worn stiletto heels since I came out.
Yeah, they're hard to walk in.
Yeah,
I've worn them a lot, but
I noticed on your pictures. Yeah,
I like heels, but I've backed up. I'm in palm strings. It's more casual, but I love my heels.
Yeah. Well, I love them, but let's put it this way. I would be the only woman in Boulder, Colorado that wore stiletto heels
yeah,
today.
you really stand out, right? Yeah, well, you have to wear cute little boots, like cute little cute boots or cute little sandals. A lot of it depends. I'm from Chicago, so I could be in a big city, and I always wore my pumps, as they would call them, right? So they were like 3 to 4 inches, and then I wear the real high ones when I went out to. I put an 8-inch heels on one night when I went to a party, and by the end of the night, I had to take them off. I mean, my feet were throbbing. I'm walking barefoot on the streets in Chicago.
My gosh.
Yeah, they were so. Oh my gosh. Oh, they're horrible. So yeah, the reality of heels. But so when you talk about the, so let's say you're coming out. You're in. Like you said, you're coming out and you're dressing. You're coming into your own. When you were with your ex. You did not have the conversation of your gender fluidity with her, I take it. And did you ever tell her, or did you just do it?
She knew about my dressing from, I think, right as we got married, right before we got married. She never approved of it, didn't like it, didn't really want to see it. And it really led to our separation. So
yeah, it got to be where the communication just wasn't there, right? I mean, you didn't know how to define it. She didn't know how to define what she felt, except she didn't like it. Then it became very mucky.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so
how long were you married?
15 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
And
do you have a child?
We do have a son. Mm-hmm. My son and daughter-in-law do know about Carrie. They're very accepting. They like to see pictures.
How long has your son known? How old is your son? Is he in his 30s?
He's 34.
34. And how long has he known about?
4 years now. It was a funny story. We went to tell them and said...
Your current wife and you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
My wife and I went to tell them. They were living a couple of hours away from us. And we said we had something we wanted to talk to them about. And they said, fine, come on, then we'll go out to eat. So we got there and told them. And they were looking at us weird. And I thought, oh, boy, this didn't go well. And they looked at each other and they both go, we thought this was going to be about end-of-life stuff and wills and all. This is kind of fun.
So you remind me of a story that I had heard too, or someone that did a similar thing with their daughters. They were like 22, and the same kind of thing, the conversation that you had, and they said, "Oh, Dad, we thought you were dying of cancer. Oh, this, we can live with this. We're just happy you're around." So isn't that the sweetest thing? I mean, I think that's so wonderful. Yeah,
it was pretty fun, and they wanted to see pictures of our holiday party where we, my wife and I, dressed in.
Oh, I saw your Santa. It's the one you put on social media. I did see with your Santa hats on, right? What a darling photo! It is so cute.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was darling. I mean, I know some people commented and said, we should make that like a Christmas card. That is so cute. And I'm always into my Santa hats. Like every year I try to put a Santa hat on my husband and he fights me. And then I used to do it with my poor Yorkshire Terrier and he fought me. And, it's a very hard to get Santa hat pictures. So, I noticed you didn't have your dog in there though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no Santa
Well,
hats on your dog. Don't you have a big dog?
we have 2 German Shepherds,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they would disown us if we put hats on them.
Oh, are they 2 boys?
No, a girl and a
Oh,
boy.
yeah, but no. They're like, no, we're not wearing that. No,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, no,
If you can make my 85 pounds of hair wear a hat, yeah, try it.
So tell me how you, I know you're coveted. I know you're working. You've got this job with, a fairly high profile job. How do you, are you comfortable with not having to come out to them, or, have you ever felt like nervous about it, or what if they found out tomorrow? How would you feel?
That's a good question. We talk about that all the time because I work in an industry that is very small worldwide, and I don't know if you remember what is it, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and
Yes.
my industry is kind of the 3 degrees of me, and it's not because of how great I am or anything. It's just because I've been doing it for so long.
Right.
I just don't know.
Yeah. Like, how important is it? Is the trade-off, like, how important is it that you have to, I mean, you know who you are. So is it that important to have to bring it to, like, make everyone aware of it? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Like, do you have to do it or not? I mean,
And that's just it. I don't. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, you can be who you are, right? Without having to,
because I work remotely.
Right.
And so I can pretty much do what I want. And if there's an emergency, I call it deconstruct, go back to boy mode.
Right.
Pretty quickly.
Right.
And
I don't think I've ever seen your boy mode. I've seen I've seen Carrie, but I don't think I've ever seen boy. Maybe sometime back. I don't know.
I think I did.
I think you did outside your place. I think you did once. It's a while ago. Yes, and then you were with your dog. Because I remember your German Shepherd for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, you were
a little bit.
Yeah.
You're just like me. Oh, you got dogs? What kind?
Exactly. Isn't it horrible? My poor Charlie passed of heart disease. So, and we're still crying about it. But I remember people that when he passed, we got cards from all the dog owners that sent, cards to me. And they barely knew our name, but they knew Charlie's name. So,
exactly.
You know your dog's name if you're a dog person. So, So let me ask you one last question here. And then, this is the beginning of conversations. I always say it's just the start. But so tell me about Robin and because it sounds like you've done the work. You've gone to therapy together. How long have you been together, and how did that all, start out in that relationship with her?
Well, we actually worked together 25 years ago, and we've been together now for 25 years. And for some reason, I was still married at the time, and one time I was just feeling really vulnerable, and I told her that, and I knew that my ex-wife was wanting me to be out of her life by then, and I just told Robin that I like to dress, and she said, "Well, that's cool. Are you gay?" I'm like, "Well, no."
Right.
And that's still the first question most people ask when I come out to a cisgender person. But yeah, I told her then, and then we.
And the interesting thing with a lot of gay men don't dress. I mean, there's drag queens. Most don't.
Most don't.
I mean, they're drag queens, but that's actually more of a performance for many of them. I'm not quite sure. I have to get one on a gay drag queen because I'm curious to see I think there's some dual gender going on in there too, but I don't know. But yeah, so that's such a silly question. So you said no, I'm not gay.
And then we went out when I got when I was separated. We went out, and we've been together ever since. So.
Wow. So that's 25 years. And does she have children from her first any relationships or no?
No, but she claims my son, and he claims her.
Oh, absolutely. They're so young. I mean, yeah, your son was lucky. So you have a nice family. And so you came out really only about 4 years ago to your son, right? He was like 31.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that went great. And then your parents, did they know about it?
My parents are gone. My dad's been gone over 20 years. My mom's been gone about 10. And my sister and my brother and their families know. And that went okay.
Yeah, it's like you tell them, and then they go back to the football game or something, right?
Well, it created a riff in there for about a year. But,
right. We still love you, but we don't understand you.
I wasn't sure that they loved me even, but
I know. Yeah, it's hard.
It is.
It is. It's hard for, it just depends on how open of a person you are. It really does. So, yeah. So the family's mended, and the people that know Carrie are people that you care, those are the people you care about anyways. And the other ones you really, unless it makes some sense to do it, why do it, right?
We have plans to come out to neighbors over the weekend because we only have one neighbor that can actually see our house, and it's hard to explain how our neighborhood's laid out, but it's
so they're in proximity, so they could see you like going in as dual gender.
And we really like them, so we want to be honest with them.
Right. So they're not like, what is this? Not who they said they were going to be. It reminds me of Bewitched with Mrs. Kravitz, right? Remember Mrs. Kravitz when she used to peek and she'd see, she'd see like things that didn't exist, and they actually existed, but they were witches. So anyway,
that's right. I forgot.
Yeah, it was a good show. So I'm going to close out, and I will be back in touch with you. And I really thank you so much for being on the show. And then maybe we'll get you and Robin on next time.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, and we'll sit down and we'll just kind of get her perspective, because it's always about the relationship. And since you went to therapy, I'm sure, you started out, even though you were committed to each other, you still had a journey. So let's do that next time. So I'll have you back in the season. And I'm just going to close out. I want to thank you again very, very much, Carrie, for coming on. And I want to personally thank my audience for listening to the show. I really, really appreciate the support, and I continue to keep the conversation open on gender identity. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening.